Hey y'all, it's Katie. Hope everyone's doing well. Today we're going to be talking about all the books that I read in the month of April. Reading-wise, April was a really great month for me, which of course means that I did almost absolutely nothing when it comes to school. Also, for this wrap-up, we are not going to be talking about any of the books that I do have reviews for, so if you want to see what any of those are, I'll have them all linked down below. I don't know what it is about spring, but something about it just makes me really get into contemporaries. So everything except for the one trilogy and one particular book that I have for this month has been a contemporary. Between the 6 books that I have reviewed and the rest that I have here that we're about to talk about, I've read a total of 18 books this month, which is beyond crazy. What that also means is that I'm going to have to talk really fast and really briefly on each of these books to get through all of them without making this a 30-minute wrap-up. First up, we have Such a Pretty Girl by Laura Weiss. I gave this book an 8.5 out of 10. I really loved it. It chronicles the story of Meredith, whose father abused her and several other people and was sent to prison, and he was supposed to be locked up for 9 years, but after 3 he somehow gets out early and now he's back in her life, and her mom doesn't care. She wants him to be there, and so she's kind of dealing with the repercussions of him living back at home and trying to figure out how to live in that environment. I thought Laura Weiss did a really great job of chronicling all of the emotions going on inside of Meredith and all the different conflicted feelings that she was having because of everything that was going on. I thought it was very real, very blunt, and very honest, and I really enjoyed it. It was a really short book, so it's definitely something that you could pick up really quickly and read and love. Next up is Shackled by Tom Levin. I gave this book a 6.7 out of 10. It didn't click with me. I don't know why. The writing wasn't particularly bad or anything. I don't know what it was, but this story just really did not draw me in. I wasn't that invested of it. When it ended, it was kind of just, oh, okay. I don't feel emotionally attached to any of the characters at all, and I was just kind of disappointed with it. I don't know. I mean, the plot was fine, so I don't know what it is about it, but I just did not love this book. Shackled is from the point of view of our protagonist, Pelly, who, when she was much younger, was with her best friend when her best friend was kidnapped, and she's kind of still dealing with the repercussions of that, and it's still just really hard for her to focus. And then one day, while she's at work, kind of just doing her thing and like still very nervous and very bad at being around people, this old man and a young girl come in, and after they order, when the man's not paying attention, the girl mouths, "Help me," and she looks at her and realizes that it's Tara, her best friend who was kidnapped, and she says Tara, and the girl looks up, and the man says, "No, that's not her name." And so from then on, she's kind of just trying to figure out what's going on, and is it really Tara? How can we save her? Like I said, the idea is really interesting, but it just was not for me. Up next is Exit Pursued by a Bear by E.K. Johnston. This book revolves around our main character, Hermione, who is co-captain of the cheerleading squad with her best friend Polly. She's kind of got it together, she loves her friends, she loves to cheer, she's really hardworking and driven, and then one night while she's at cheer camp, she is slipped a date rape drug and wakes up in the morning with no memory of the assault, just the pain and everything that kind of goes along with it, and has to be told what happened by her best friend Polly. Because of the way that everything went down at camp and her having gone missing the night before, and they had to find her before they could realize what happened, and everything that ended up happening, the whole school, the whole town, everyone knows what happened to Hermione, which is obviously already very difficult to deal with. So then for the rest of the school year, Hermione's kind of dealing with this, dealing with everybody knowing, some people tiptoeing around her, some people not caring about her feelings, her boyfriend being beyond insensitive. Her parents don't know how to react, she doesn't really know what to do, and it's really hard just to deal with it. I think it does a really wonderful job of chronicling all the inner turmoil, all the feelings and rage and kind of recovery that she goes through throughout the course of the book, and like her growth as a person as she's healing from this trauma. And I thought it was so well done. It was a wonderful book. Next up, we have Night Road by Kristen Hanna, which made me cry more than any book that I've ever read. After Clockwork Princess and Mockingjay and The Fault in Our Stars, I did not think that it could be done. I did not think that I could cry more. But Kristen Hanna, you have proved me wrong, and I gave this book 10 out of 10. Night Road is actually an adult fiction book, which is from the point of view of Jude, who is the mother of 2 twin teenagers. The twins are inseparable, and Jude does everything that she possibly can for them. She loves her kids so much, and she puts being a mom before anything else in the entire world. And Zach is kind of more outgoing, whereas Mia is very introverted and doesn't really have any friends of her own. Like, she kind of just hangs out with Zach or does her own thing. And then this new girl, Lexi, moves to town, and they become best friends. Right off the bat, Lexi meets Zach, and Mia tells her that her last best friend was only pretending to like her to get to Zach. And so from that minute, Lexi knows Zach is off limits, and I will not sacrifice my friendship with Mia for anything. But of course, in the way that it always happens, Lexi and Zach fall in love with each other, and that complicates things, and it kind of just changes everything, but it's okay, and they kind of go on with it. And then one night, this terrible thing happens, which is a total spoiler, so I'm not going to say what it is, but something really, really awful that will make you sob your eyes out happens, and they're kind of dealing with that for the rest of their lives, and like they're torn, and the next 2 years are just like really difficult between everyone, and it's really hard to try to watch them try to figure out who they are and what's kind of going on, and if they can forgive each other and everything like that with the whole family dynamic. And we see little snippets kind of from like Lexi and Mia and Zach's points of view, but Jude is the main like overarching person of the story. This book absolutely broke my heart, but in the best possible way. It was really well written, even though a lot of times the characters frustrated me, and I was just so, it was just so well done that I couldn't even be upset because I'm just so in love with the story. The other day I literally just started thinking about it and I was crying again, so definitely a must read. Next up is Breaking Beautiful by Jennifer Shaw Wolf. This does not have a cover. I gave this book an 8 out of 10. I really, really enjoyed reading it. I thought it was really important, and there were a lot of conversations in it that needed to be had, things that needed to be said, and the characters were very real and relatable and genuinely interesting. Breaking Beautiful follows the story of Allie, who was in an accident with her boyfriend Trip, who died from this accident. Somehow his truck went off the cliff, and she was thrown from the truck before it did so, and she doesn't really remember the whole night before. She doesn't really know what's happening, and she's just having a really hard time because she doesn't really know how she should feel right now because Trip is dead, but there are a lot of complications to their relationship that everybody doesn't know about when they're saying like, oh, this is so sad, and like they're grieving for her, but she doesn't know if she can grieve. So it's a really complicated feeling, and she's kind of dealing with that in her own recovery and trying to like find happiness again after not only the actual accident in her relationship with Trip prior to the accident. Next up is My Name is Rapunzel by Casey Hilton. I gave this book a 5 out of 10. I was honestly really, really disappointed in it. I was really looking forward to it because we don't get a whole lot of Rapunzel retellings, but it just did not meet my expectations. This book follows the story of Rapunzel, and the story kind of goes the same way as we expected it. We just get a little bit more backstory, wherein the day of her first kiss, when the boy that she loves proposes to her, Rapunzel is cursed by a witch, and her boyfriend suitor is killed, and then from then on she cannot age for some reason. She doesn't know what it is, and so then she's kind of just living with that for the rest of her life. In this adaptation, she does live with her parents prior to their deaths, and then her father says, you'll be safer in this castle, and look, the witch will take care of you because she knows about you and that you're immortal, so you guys can like be not lonely together and like live forever together in this ivory tower. I thought that the additional elements that were added to the story were all very interesting, but they just weren't done very well for me. The writing felt kind of childish, and even if this were a children's book, it just doesn't seem all that there. It's very simple, very hard to get through. Like, I have had to work a lot to push myself through the pages to the end, and while the end was nice and happy and lovely, I did not like this book. Next up we have Until Friday Night by Abby Glines. I give this book an 8.7 out of 10. I really, really enjoyed reading it. I thought the writing was really great, and I enjoyed the characters, even though some of them were a little cliche. Until Friday Night is a dual perspective book following the stories of West and Maggie. West is the star of the football team and the player and that guy that everybody thinks is the greatest, and he puts on a really great front and he's a party guy, but actually his father is dying of cancer and he hasn't told anyone. None of his friends know, nobody but him and his mom knows, and he goes home every night and like tries to spend time with his dad and like hope that he's healing, and has to watch him slowly deteriorate, and the doctors say that there's nothing more that they can do. Maggie's moving in with her aunt and cousin, her cousin who is one of Wes's friends from the football team. 2 years ago, Maggie witnessed her father murdering her mother, and that's kind of still stuck with her since then. She hasn't spoken. She's mute now, and nobody has ever talked to her about these things. They kind of just were like, okay, this is it, your parents are gone, new home, and they don't ever address what happened or how she might be reacting and recovering and dealing with having witnessed that. The night that they meet, Maggie can see the same pain in her own eyes in Wes, and she can tell that something's going on there, and he needs someone to talk to, and he figures, well, this girl doesn't talk, so he decides to let out his emotions, and then she replies, and everything kind of just funnels in from there. This book was really well written. It dealt with falling in love at the same time as handling really profound loss and kind of recovery, and that needing to be an individual process, and that like it couldn't be something that they could do for each other, and how they both had to walk that road. And it was really, really well written, and I really enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would, especially for this kind of cliche type of contemporary. Next up is The Truth About Forever by Sarah Dessen. I really did love this book. I thought it was really well written. I gave it an 8 out of 10. Sarah Dessen always does a really great job, and I always have a really emotional but well done time reading these books. Our protagonist Macy is working for the summer in her brainiac boyfriend's job at the library while he's away at brain camp. Macy is one of those people who really feels the pressure to be perfect, between her boyfriend being a genius and her mother being very, very successful. It's kind of a lot that she feels that she has to hold on her shoulders, and the library is one part of that, and school, and having to study SATs over the summer and things like that. About a year or two ago, Macy's father died, and she watched him take his last breaths, and her mom have never talked about it. They haven't talked about him since he died. It's like an unspoken rule that like they don't address him. So she kind of has never really gotten to grieve him or feel any way about him because they just haven't acknowledged it. And then one night when Macy's mom is hosting this open house for her company, the catering staff needs help because someone is sick and out. And so Macy runs in to help them, and they're fun and chaotic and crazy and very messy and don't have it together at all, but they're so kind and they're living life and they're really kind of enjoying it. And she loves the whole crew, but there's especially this one very, very attractive, of course, boy named Wes, who she ends up talking to, and they end up getting really close and kind of sharing things that they have in common and kind of getting each other to see things differently. And so she's kind of trying to balance, like, can I be a part of this world while still being a part of the one that I'm in with my mom and my boyfriend and all of the organization and rigidness that I've lived with thus far. I wouldn't say this is my favorite Sarah Dessen because it just didn't really click with me personally, but it was a really great story and it was really well written, of course, so if you do like Sarah Dessen, definitely something to pick up. Our last standalone is What I Thought Was True by Huntley Fitzpatrick. The only other thing by Huntley that I've read was My Life Next Door, which I loved so much, so I was really excited to get my hands on this. This book was really, really great. I love the characters, I love the story. I did give it an 8.3 out of 10. I just really had a great time reading it. I feel like the big thing about contemporaries is that they're often a dichotomy, and they're either dealing with all the good things about like falling in love or getting used to college or whatever on this end, and on the other end of the spectrum we have all of the really dark subject material, and one or the other typically ends up completely taking over the book. And I thought that this particular book did a really great job of kind of dealing in the middle, because it wasn't particularly like the worst things, and it wasn't the best things. It was just like, oh, like these are some frustrating things that do happen in life that it's like, wow, like that's annoying, that shouldn't be happening, let's talk about it. And even though they weren't really dark, they are still important to talk about, and I thought it was really, really well written. Our main character, Gwen, lives in a small island town. It's very touristy, and everyone on the island doesn't really have a lot of money because they're just doing the touristy type jobs, but a lot of times rich kids from over the bridge will come over and they'll meet them, they'll be friends with them, but they don't go to the same schools, they don't have the same kind of lifestyles. At the beginning of the story, Gwen wants to leave really, really badly because her biggest mistake ever, a boy named Cassidy, is currently going to be on the island for the whole summer when he would normally just visit, because he is one of the rich kids from over the bridge. And so now she's kind of dealing with the repercussions of everything that happened with him and all of the history that has gone on over the last year or two on the island, and really just wanting to get away while kind of trying to keep away from Cassidy when he wants to pursue something more. Like I said, really well written, really fun, kind of light with a little bit of harder topics kind of story, and it was definitely a really good read. And finally, for this wrap up, we have the Rising Trilogy by Pierce Brown. I'm very late to the party on these books, but I'm so glad that I finally read them because they were so good. One of the best trilogies that I've read in a really long time. I plan on doing an entire discussion to kind of talk about the series and everything that I have to say on it, but for right now I just want to acknowledge that that did happen this month and that they were so wonderful. Pierce Brown's writing is phenomenal. I have never highlighted so much in any books in my entire life. I love these characters, I love this world, it's so complex, so developed, the plot is so ingenious, and I love everything about this series. Oh my goodness, I'm so glad that I finally read it. The premise of the first book of this trilogy is that we are starting in the mind of Darrow, who works in the mines on Mars, or underneath Mars really, because he's underground constantly. He's a red, which means he has red eyes, red hair, and he is the lowest class of people that there is, basically slaves. At the beginning of this book, Darrow's wife, whom he loves more than anything, is executed by the government for daring to contradict them at all, daring to dream of a better world. He just looks around and sees his people always starving, always miserable, never getting to really live, and there's no reason they're not any worse of people intrinsically. So he decides to do something about it, and kind of things happen in a way that he can try to rise up and try to take down the people who are making his family miserable and like the people that are controlling his region of Mars. Like I said, so good. I can't believe I waited this long to read these books. Oh my goodness gracious. And that is it for this month's wrap up. Thanks so much.